Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Facebook Live talking and answering questions about remote work and remote leadership. This is day 11 of doing this. So we're heading over 30 questions at this point. And tonight I want to ask you this. Would you like to have less stress in working with your teammates? Would you like to have less conflict when working with your teammates? Would you like to have better communication when you're working with your teammates? I'm guessing the answer to all three is yes. Check yes, check yes, check yes. And are all of those things more likely to happen when we're working remotely? Check yes again. So that's tonight's focus. Tonight, we're going to talk about agreements and expectations with our coworkers, with our fellow teammates, with the other folks that we work with that are also remote like we are. While there's certainly opportunities for stress and conflict and communication challenges when we work down the hall or in the next cubicle, the chances and the opportunities for that to happen are even greater when we're all remote. And as I was talking with my able teammate, Marlene, who is on the Facebook side of this conversation, we were talking about, even though we've been doing this for years, sometimes we have challenges here. So we're not going to get it perfect because we're dealing with human beings, but we can make real progress. And we're going to help you answer 3 questions in just a second around all of that. Now, if you're with me live on the Facebook side, put in your comments. Marlene will see them and give me a chat message. If you are on the Zoom side, you can just type them in right there and I will see them. And it's magic. And so we've got them there. And if you're neither place, but you're watching later and you have a question you'd like me to address in a future day, info@kevineikenberry.com. Marlene will put that on the Facebook side, info@kevineikenberry.com. And you can ask your question and we'll answer it tomorrow or the next day. We'll be back tomorrow again at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So let's dive into this piece about expectations. The first question I got was actually, how do I get more agreement with my teammates about our work when we're remote? That's the question. And so the first thing I would say is, if you don't have an agreement with someone about something, the best thing you can do is to ask, how can we have a conversation? So let me just play this out. Let's say that Marlene and I are coworkers. And I would say, hey, Marlene, I'd love for us to have a conversation because it feels like we're at cross purposes. Feels like we're not always quite, it's not always quite working quite right. Can we have a conversation and talk about situation X? Now, first of all, I describe that and I would encourage you to do that on a phone call or using your webcam, not in an email. Why? Because in the email, it might get misinterpreted. Very possible, right? That's the first thing. So ask the question. Notice the next thing I did. I didn't ask the question with a negative intent. I didn't ask it assuming that Marlene is screwing up, or that why is Marlene not doing it the way I want her to do it. Now, I might feel that way, but we need to address this from a place of, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of curiosity, from a place of collaboration and curiosity, not from a place of judgment and you screwed up, right? So try to start a conversation, talk about, hey, this looks like maybe it's a problem for both of us. I'd love for us to talk about how we can make it better. Put the focus on them. If you recognize that they're frustrated too, start it there. You might be really frustrated and you might think the other person is screwing up. But if you come at it from that perspective, the chances of it going well, not good. The first thing is, if you want to have clearer expectations, you got to ask for a conversation to try to fix it. See, most of the time when people think about expectations, they say, well, that's something the boss does. My manager sets expectations with me. How can I set expectations with my teammates? Well, that's why I like the question, which actually framed it as agreements. What can we agree to together about how we're going to work together, how we're going to make things work? So that's the first question. And hopefully that gives you some idea, some strategy. Now, as it turns out, that strategy would work just as well if you were working down the hall as if you are remote. It's just that there may be more needs to do it when you're remote. The second question that I got was about scheduling. How do I schedule time with my coworkers? Used to be I could just walk down the hall and poke my head in, or I'd see them walking by my cubicle and I could say, hey, can we have a minute? And so how do we schedule time with our coworkers when we're all working remotely, the first thing I would say is recognize that not everyone has the same kind of schedule. Now, if you're working remotely and doing customer facing work, call center type of work, for example, you probably are on exactly the same schedules, or you know what schedule each other is on. But if you're doing a lot of other kinds of work where the exact timing doesn't matter as much, you don't have to be immediately available for customers, for example, then I think it's important that we understand our teammates' rhythms and schedules. So I know who on my team are morning people and who are not. I happen to have people across multiple time zones, so I try to take that into account. But I don't just try to take that into account in my own head. I try to really understand and have a conversation with folks. Now, I know I'm the boss, but I think it applies just the same. Even Marlene's laughing because I don't like it when she calls me the boss. But I am the leader. I'm the supervisor, and so I try to do that, and I would encourage people to do that regardless. Understand other people's rhythms when they're at their best, when what might work for them. And if you work with someone a lot, try to figure that out. The next thing is, I'm a big proponent to use the calendar when you need to talk with people, not just with your supervisor, but with your teammates. So that could look like scheduling a time. Hey, can we talk sometime this afternoon? Send that an instant message, send that an email, whatever. Can we talk this afternoon at 2:00 for about 10 minutes? And the other person is likely going to say, sure, or they're going to say, how about 3? Fine. So now you're finding a time that works together for both of you. It's not really setting an expectation, but it's related to the same whole area, working in it in a way that works best for both people. I am of the opinion that even if you're not going to schedule it like that you should at least reach out and say, hey, is now a good time for us to have a chat, rather than just picking up the phone or firing up the webcam. In our case, inside of Slack, hitting the button where Zoom will pop up. So I think, and even as the supervisor, that's what I do. And I just say, hey, is now a good time, or when would be a good time in the next hour? Now, if it's absolutely an emergency, you can say, hey, I need to talk to you for 5 minutes right now. Most of the time, that's not our situation, right? So I think the more that you can create that to give the other person some options, or at least to just be aware and focused on what their situation might be, I think that's super valuable. Another thing around this whole area around the time and scheduling is, if you're going to take a break for a certain length of time, if you were in the office, people would just see you're not in the office. You went for a walk, you had to go run an errand or whatever. Remotely, no one can see that. So use ways to let others know, hey, I'm not available for the next 30 minutes. Today, I was leading a webinar. So I said, hey, for the next hour and a half, I'm getting ready for it and leading this webinar. I'm not going to be replying to Slack messages. Not really going to be on email. Not going to be on email. So don't worry if you don't hear from me for 90 minutes. So that's the kind of thing that we can do for each other, because we don't have the visual clues of seeing whether someone's door's shut, whether they're not in their office, etc. One day last week on our team, the weather was really nice, apparently both in Indiana and in Virginia, because within a few minutes of each other, 2 members of the team said, hey, I'm going for a run. I'll be back. Now you may say, well, wow, Kevin, you're letting your people just go for a run whenever you need them to, whenever they want to. Well, kind of, yes. I'm trusting that they're getting their work done. And I want to know, and everyone else needs to know, when they can reach them or not, and when they'll be back. As long as they're getting their work done, why do I care? In those 2 cases, those people have been working really, really hard the last couple of weeks. And so for them to decide to take a run in the middle of the afternoon seems to me like a pretty fine option. And I've been talking on these calls about taking breaks. So it would be kind of a bad idea for me to say, don't run right now. Okay. So all of those are things that help us think about the scheduling and setting some agreements and expectations around how we schedule with each other, right? And so one more thing, and the other question, it's in the same area. What about what technology should we use with our teammates? And so I would say, you've got multiple technologies. You probably got some sort of web platform. You've probably got email. Clearly, you have email. You probably have some sort of instant messaging tool. You have your phone. Mine's over here. And you have the ability to use text messages, perhaps. Maybe that's inside of the boundary for your team. Maybe it's not. But I would suggest this. Pretty much everybody has a tool they like best. It would be their go-to tool. And I like to know what other people's go-to tool is. And if I can flex to what works for them, that's fine. With a great big but. The real answer here should be, what's the best tool for the situation? Not what your favorite is, not what my favorite is, etc. But if at the end of the day, and so I'm a big proponent of teams saying, how are we going to use different tools? And when we added Slack to our toolkit several years ago, some people didn't want it, didn't think we needed it. Other people were very excited about it. But all of us, it became very clear to me, we needed to have a conversation about when we're going to use when we're going to use instant messaging, and when we're going to use email, what kinds of times we're going to use each for. And we've adjusted that over time. But fundamentally, everybody sort of knows when you use Slack and when you send emails. And we have a process that generally works for us in this regard. That's what you need to create. So if you don't have it at the team level, what you need to be trying to do with individuals is to figure that out. And at some level, maybe it doesn't matter. And then bend perhaps and flex to what works best for the other person. But again, this could take you right back to the start. And maybe you need to have a conversation with that person and say, hey, Marlene, I'd love for us to talk about how we communicate, because I'm not sure it's working best for me all the time. Can we talk about it? And chances are a reasonable person is going to say, sure, let's do that. So 3 questions tonight, fundamentally around the idea of setting agreements and expectations with our peers as teammates working remotely. All of them important. None of them seem, especially I think the last 2, maybe they don't seem huge, but let me tell you, they can be. And let me tell you this too. As I send this message and say these words on the 31st of March, 2020, I know that a lot of people that are going to watch this have moved to a remote work scenario within the last couple of weeks. And you're saying, well, we haven't, and none of those things have really come up yet, Kevin. And I would say, that's great. And while I am, if nothing, I'm positive, a positive person, I can tell you that it's very possible that soon the honeymoon will be over. And some of the kinds of things that you've been figuring out how to navigate in the short term, when there's no turning back from this for at least another 30 days, maybe longer, then I think you might be surprised at how important these ideas might be. So I hope this was helpful to you, like every night. And again, if you have other kinds of questions, please send them my way. We'll answer them another day. And know as always, that our remote work resource portal continues to grow every day. All of these get put there. Some of you may be watching it from there, but there you can go on Facebook. You can see it in the description, kevineikenberry.com/COVID-19. We'll take you there to all the stuff. Some new stuff we're adding literally every day. And I'm excited about some new stuff that's coming your way soon as well. We'll be telling you about that in the coming days. Don't know what questions I'm answering tomorrow because I'm looking for them from you. Send them my way and we'll talk about them right here. Thank you so much for being here, whether you've been here live or later. Glad you've been here. We look forward to talking to you soon and answering your questions. And as always, be well, be safe, and be remarkable.